Today on 100 Yards of Football, in our Legend segment with Vincent Turner, we go to Big D, the Oak Cliff section of Dallas, Texas, where stars are born, and where a young man whose high school teammates were Aaron Wallace and Kevin Williams, future NFL players at Roosevelt High School. He and his high school teammate Aaron Wallace would follow the likes of Jeff Fuller, went on to become Aggies of Texas A&M and College Station, and become an All-Southwest Conference offensive tackle in 1989. And the Aggies would become Southwest Conference champions from 1986 and 1987. He would win the Aggie Heart Award in 1989 and become team captain in 89. The Miami Dolphins had high hopes when they selected him out of Texas A&M with the 9th overall pick of the 1990 draft. And the left tackle not only met, but he greatly exceeded all expectations. Charged with protecting Dan Marino's blind side, he was an instant starter on the Dolphins' offensive line. He played every offensive snap during his rookie year, only giving up 2 sacks and instantly proving he could go toe-to-toe with divisional rival Bruce Smith. He was so dominant that he was named to the Pro Bowl in each of his first 7 seasons, landing a spot on the NFL's 1990 All-Decade Team, and set a team record with 118 consecutive starts. Coming in at 6'6", 325 pounds, he is a 2-time first-team All-Pro 92 and 94, a 2-time second-team All-Pro 93-95, a 7-time Pro Bowl 1990 to 1996, a Pro Football Writers Association All-Rookie Team 1990, and he is a member of the Miami Dolphins Honor Roll. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to 100 Yards of Football, the future NFL Hall of Famer, Richmond Webb.
What's up, Vincent? How you doing, brother?
How you doing, Mr. Richmond Webb? If you like the video today, please come in and share it. We'll surely appreciate it here at 100 Yards Football. We're very, very thankful for the audience today. Very blessed to my producer, Logan Landers, for making it happen today. To the team of 100 Yards Football, Mr. Ronnie Keebler, thank you. To Mr. Bobby Butler, thank you. To the gentleman who just brought up Mr. Webb at a high level, Mr. Mark Bass. And, of course, to Jim Maryland for making this happen. I'm Vincent Turner here at 100 Yards Football. If you like the video today, please come in and share it. And before I bring this great legend, I got a little story that I'm going to tell before I let him speak today. Now, I'm a University of Arkansas graduate in 1982. And during that time, the Southwest Conference was the best conference in football. I'm sorry. Eric Dickerson, Harvey Armstrong, Earl Campbell, and the state of Texas was on fire. Well, some years later, I had a gentleman from my hometown that I'm good friends with. His name is Eric Blunt. He played inside linebacker for the University of Houston during the same time as the gentleman that's on the screen. And one day, me and Eric were talking. Both of us had moved to Atlanta. We was working at this establishment, the Run and Shoot, a gymnasium here in Atlanta that's real famous. So me and Eric was talking about, back where we from Whitehaven, Tennessee. And I asked Eric, like I said, man, who is the best football player you ever played against? And Eric told me, listen real carefully before I bring the gentleman up. He said, man, the tackle out of Texas A&M, Richmond Webb. He said on one play, Vince, he gave me a stinger. I had to go out of the game for a couple of plays, but all in the same play. He said not only did he block me, but he blocked Glenn Montgomery, who was an outstanding tackle at that time for Houston. And he said when Mr. Webb hit him, he had headaches for days. He said, by far, Vincent, the best pound-for-pound offensive tackle I ever played against. By far. Then when I look at this gentleman, I'm going to give him the floor here in 1 second. I look at all the great offensive tackles that came out of college football. Orlando Pace at Ohio State. Ron Yeary at USC. John Hicks at Ohio State. Jonathan Alton at UCLA. And Tony Baselli at USC. Let me tell you something. For my money, I'm putting it on the gentleman that's on our screen today, and we very, very blessed. Mr. Richmond Webb, how are you doing today, sir?
Hey Vincent, good man. That was one heck of a introduction, man. I appreciate you having me on, and man, I appreciate your team and all the research they did to give me such a grand introduction. And yeah, I got a call from Mr. Maryland. I've been knowing him for years. His son Russell came in the league the year after me, but he played at the U down in Miami and known that family for probably since 91 or 92. So over 30 years, was just a great family. And he reached out to me, and I'm glad he made the connection. So I'm doing good and glad to be on your show.
Well, the thing about 100 Yards Football, we bring up people that's made a great impact, not only on the field, but off the field. And I do a little things differently. Today it's going to be all about you. And I want you to start for your humble beginnings. I'm going to say Sappho Cliff, Dallas, Texas. There must be something in the water that when you look at all the great athletes that came out of that area. And one athlete I seen play, Mr. Webb, I was 12 years old. I didn't know the great Wayman Bryant was from Sappho Cliff. Then when you look at it, Dwayne Scales, basketball, that went to Florida State, Jesse Armstead from Miami, Harvey Martin, former Cowboys great. Then your high school producing you, Jeff Fuller, Kevin Williams, Aaron Wallace. So I'm going to tell us from your humble beginnings, from Sappho Cliff, what's in the water there, and how did you start, and who was your mentors that got you playing football early?
Man, you know, I grew up right in Oak Cliff, and we grew up in the Roosevelt was a high school area that I grew up in. So grew up a Mustang, you know, that's where I always wanted to go to high school and stuff like that. And so some of my neighbors, they were a few years older than me, and went to Roosevelt. So just had that love. Back then it was about, if you was from that neighborhood, you wanted to attend that school or whatever. And just the principals, the teachers, administrators we had coming up, they just instilled that in us, you know, at an early age. And then, like you said, Oak Cliff, Jesse Armstead was from Carter, different area of Oak Cliff. And then like Harvey Martin was from South Oak Cliff, which was our arch rival high school. But, you know, it was just a huge amount of talent, you know, right there in Oak Cliff. And Oak Cliff is not that big, but I think the thing, you don't hear as many kids come out of Oak Cliff now, but you hear like DeSoto, Cedar Hill, stuff like that around Dallas. But that's basically because everybody that grew up in Oak Cliff moved out to the suburbs, and so the gene pool moved out. But just always had that love, and then, you know, great coaches coming up, played football and basketball at Roosevelt, and, you know, even Roy Martin, he was a world-class sprinter that was in our class. Actually tried out for the Olympics in '84 as a junior in high school. So we were just blessed with a bunch of talent, and we had coaches and stuff and teachers that instilled things in us to help, you know, maximize our potential. And you had examples like you said, Jeff Fuller, but also John Jefferson went to my high school, which played for the well, it was San Diego now, it's the LA Chargers now, but, you know, he kind of put us on the map and stuff like that. So Tank Marshall, a lot of guys that just came before me, and I can keep going on and on, but that's what it was. So we had guys, even though we didn't actually meet all of them, just to know they went to the same high school and played there, you wanted to uphold that tradition.
Now I'm going to tell another story. You chose Texas A&M, and I'm going to let you get to why you chose Texas A&M. But at the time, I'm living in Knoxville, Tennessee, still an avid college football fan, the '88 Cotton Bowl. And I'm looking at Notre Dame, that big defensive line they had, Chris Deutsch, a couple of guys who went to the NFL. But Bucky Richardson, they talked about him being an outstanding freshman quarterback. But I saw this guy, and I'm looking at you right now, dominating Chris Deutsch. And I believe you was a sophomore at the time, correct?
I was a sophomore, and I was playing left guard at the time. You're right.
Okay. And I seen you pushing him back, way back. And I'm saying, man, this gentleman right here is going to be the next great thing on a college level. And then I thought about this. This gentleman, I know you was highly recruited. You could have went anywhere in the country. But I'm saying, why did he choose Texas A&M? But then I thought about the history. The Johnson boys, Gene Stallings, Charlie Kruger, Jack Pardee. And then when you think about A&M, you don't too much think about the offensive side. You think about all the great defensive players, especially in the mid-'70s. Jacob Green, Sam Adams, Lester Hayes, Pat Thomas that played with the Rams, Aaron Glenn, Kevin Smith, Dave Emdorf, Johnny Holland, and then your teammate Johnny Roper. So, and then you think about the great running backs. When I was there from 78 to 82, Curtis Dickey, Johnny Hector, who I tell everybody up close and personal, outside Eric Dickerson, the best running back I've seen. So going back, my question to you, what made you choose A&M?
Well, for one, like you said, I was highly recruited coming out of high school, and probably could have went anywhere in the country, but I focused more on the schools in the Southwest Conference, and I visited Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And one reason I didn't want to go too far away from home because I wanted my parents to be able to come see me play, and just the financial burden if you go too far away.
Yes, sir.
You can't drive, stuff like that. So, we was from the hood, and it gave my parents the opportunity to come see me play. But probably came down between A&M and I believe it was Oklahoma State, and just the Aggie connection. And Johnny Holland was the guy that actually showed me and Aaron Wallace around, him and Steve Bullitt. And Steve Bullitt was the outside linebacker, but Johnny was, All-American inside linebacker, played for the Green Bay Packers, and he's coaching now with San Francisco 49ers. But it just felt like home, the guys there, this and that. And I kind of thought about what you were saying back then in the Southwest Conference. Arkansas was the only school that wasn't in the state of Texas that was in the Southwest Conference. And, people talk about the SEC, and which, I give them that credit, but to have 7 schools in one conference in the state of Texas, and everybody's vying for the same athletes. You imagine if we had maybe 3 schools versus 7 in all in one conference, it was that. But yeah, we used to have some serious battles, and I remember coming to Fayetteville and how hard it was to play up there and this and that. So I take my hat off to
They were calling them hogs, wasn't they?
Man, them hogs were no joke up there, man. It was rough going to Arkansas.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, the thing I want to talk to you about is that when you look at the people you played with at A&M and the relationships, I was reading something on you. The thing, you was elected team captain, the highest honor. But one thing, just doing my research on you, the thing you said that really made you really proud of A&M was Kyle Field used to be so loud. And then you said the 12th man, but this was stuck out in my mind. You said the student body they stood up during the whole game.
And still today, that was one of those. And my college head coach, Jackie Sherrill, he came up with the idea, I believe this came up with the 12th man kickoff team. And at that time, I think when I was there, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure nobody returned the ball past the 30-yard line when we had that 12. And it was a kickoff team of all walk-ons. Guys tried out, and if you could see what they had to go through to actually make that football team, it would probably make some guys on scholarship quit, but they just had that love for the school and wanted to be part of it. And that's what they look for on Saturdays, getting an opportunity where it's 2 or 3 times just to run down and run into somebody and try to knock them out. That's what they look forward to. So A&M was a school on big tradition, but yeah, you're right. The student body to this day still stands. And I think it was a couple of years ago, I went back for the Alabama game, and we ended up beating Alabama at Kyle Field, and that game was deafening. I mean, I could look at the person next to me and couldn't even you could see my lips moving, but it was just so loud. So it's a great place, and even if you were a school that's visiting, normally Aggie fans are pretty friendly. So it's a good school if you want to go tailgate or check out a college experience. It's a great place to go watch a football game.
Now we got the NFL draft coming up on Thursday. You went in the 1990. We had Barry Foster from the University of Arkansas, Pig Sooie, Rodney Hampton, outstanding running back from Georgia, Leroy Butler. What it's like to be part of that great class in the 90s, because a lot of people don't know some serious players were in that class and a lot of Hall of Famers. And everybody, I did my research because that's my nickname. A lot of draft experts say you was pound for pound the best overall player in that draft.
Yeah, I'm thinking back, I was just at a golf tournament last week, and I was just thinking from the Southwest Conference, just in the first round, Andre Ware from the University of Houston. He was a 7th pick. I think I went 9th. And then James Francis was a linebacker from Baylor that went after that. Lamar Lathan. So we had 4 first-round picks out of 30. I might be missing somebody, but I know we had at least 4 first-round picks that came out of Southwest Conference. So that was pretty impressive. Rodney Hampton. I'm sorry. No, Hamp was from Houston, but he played at Georgia. I forgot.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, it was just amazing to have that many from just one conference. 4. I thought that was pretty good, and we all went off to have pretty good careers and stuff like that. So it just showed, like you said, the level of competition and talent that was in the Southwest Conference at that time.
Now, Mr. Webb, my producer, Mr. Logan Landers, is just being annoying of you. He's the youngest of 100 Yards Football. So he has a question for you, and I know he's excited to get at the bit. Mr. Logan Landers, you up at the plate.
Thank you, Mr. Turner, for the warm introduction, as always. So, Mr. Webb, kind of go off what Mr. Turner just said there, talking about the draft, how first round's coming up tomorrow, you yourself being a top 10 pick on number 9 overall. What's some advice you would give to the kids who are going to get their name called, especially in the first round tomorrow night? What would you say to them? Because I'm sure you had, and I'm sure that they're going to have a lot of nerves, a lot of excitement, have the whole family around. So just give some advice to the young players who are going to hear their name called tomorrow night.
Yeah, the biggest thing is, the NFL has done a tremendous job with the draft. I think now it's almost like going to the Grammys. I think it was 2018 or 19. I went to the draft in Nashville, and they do an outstanding job, promoting it, the fan experience, this and that. But back when I came out, a few guys would go to like New York for the draft, this and that. But I went home. I was in Dallas at my parents' house. And I think the thing you got to try to do is just relax. At that time, I was watching ESPN, and I had talked to, I think, Miami. I think I talked to the Raiders, Kansas City. It was like 3 or 4 teams, and most of them saying, if you're there, we're going to take you, but we think you probably should be off the board by the end. But even though I was the 9th pick, I was still nervous because until you get your name called, you've seen strange things happen in the draft where guys are sliding to go. So just try to, remain calm, don't get so caught up in the moment, and try to enjoy the experience. But once you get your name called, you know where you're going. It's like a big weight off your shoulders, this and that, and everybody's happy for you. So I can remember that like it was yesterday. And I can remember the phone ringing at my mom's house, and picked it up, and it was Coach Shula, and he said, "Hey, are you ready to be a Dolphin?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he called actually when the Patriots had the 8th pick, and they was picking Chris Singleton. And I think back then you got 15 minutes for each, in the first round for each slot of draft. But I had to wait 15 minutes. They took up that whole time before they called my name, but they actually did. man, I could breathe. I was so happy, and when did some local interviews with, I think it was the NBC affiliate there in Dallas and this and that. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. So just try to sit back and enjoy it. If you put the work in, your name's gonna get called. Might not be as soon as, might be sooner, but you just got to trust the process. But yeah, just enjoy it because it's nothing like it.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Football. Back to you.
Okay, you get drafted by the Dolphins. I believe you played 10 years in the Dolphins organization, correct?
11.
In 11, okay. Tell us about all the great teammates that you played with Miami. You start with Dan Marino, Sammy Smith, Marco Coleman. I didn't know Hugh Green. You played with Hugh Green, E.J. Jr., T.J. Turner, Mark Clay, Mark Duper, Keith Jackson, Troy Vincent, Irvin Fryer, Louis Oliver, Keith Byers, Ohio State finest, Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas, Pharrell Edmonds, who has 2 sons right now in the NFL. The little running back who I love, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the UCLA, they had a couple of good seasons with y'all. Sam Madison and Patrick Surtain. And then after you come in on those great players, it's a guy that I know personally. Saw him play at Memphis State, quarterback in the early 70s. Your relationship with Kippy Brown out of Sweetwater, Tennessee. Tell us about all those relationships and all those great players and with Mr. Kippy Brown.
Yeah, the thing is, when I got there, the good thing was I went to a winning organization, and Coach Shula was a very disciplined coach and demanded excellence. Always focused on the little things, the penalties, the mental errors, just like this. So just being I can remember the first mini camp I went to, got drafted about a week later. I was in Miami, and then, you had a mini camp or whatever. So you get introduced to all the media and stuff, being the first round pick and all that. But now the pressure, or at least for me, it was pressure because you want to prove you're worthy of being, selected that high in the draft and all that. So good thing was they drafted a guy in the second round, Keith Sims, and 2 linemen. And what was unheard of at that time was putting 2 rookies not only side by side, but putting them on the blind side of the quarterback. So I think we understood the assignment that Dan Marino was already a legend when we got there, but to be in the huddle, walking there with Dan Marino, and then you had Duper on one side and Clayton on the other, and you saw how they worked in practice, the work they put in, the precision they ran, their routes and stuff like that, that you had no choice but to get in line. And then, like you said, I think the next year we drafted Randall Hill, and then the year after that was Marco Coleman and Troy Vincent, and then O.J. McDuffie, and then I think Tim Bowens, and it kept going on. And then we brought in, like you said, guys like Keith Byers, Keith Jackson, Mark Ingram, Irvin Fryer, Eric Green. I played with so many top-notch guys, and then like when Jimmy came in, like this, when you got the Zach Thomas, you got the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you got the Jason Taylor, you got the Darryl Gardner, you got Surtain and Madison, 2 shutdown corners, you got Brock Marion. The list just goes on and on and on, and it allowed us to win a lot of football games when you playing with quality guys like that, and everybody has one goal, is to win. And I think that was a lot of success. And I remember even in college, one thing that was instilled in me was you don't want to be the weak link on the team. So I always try to approach things where, I didn't want to be the reason that we were teetering on, maybe not getting over the hump or this and that, putting that study in, the mental work, not making penalties and stuff like that. We just took pride in it. And I think that's why we had as much success as we did, along with the guys that, like you mentioned, all those guys we drafted. Those were great, great players, and I still have relationships with them today.
When I look at the Hall of Fame, I'm sorry. One thing we do at 100 yards, we tell it like it is. I had a list this morning that I was looking at all the tackles that allegedly are in the Hall of Fame. I looked at Ralph Neely, Bob Brown, Ron Mix, Art Shell, Anthony Munoz, Willie Roth, Walter Jones, and Joe Thomas here recently with the Cleveland Browns. And then I look at your statistics. 7-time Pro Bowler, 114 career stars. But for me, for the Hall of Fame to not have you in, to me, they got to be insane, because I look at the 90s as one of the greatest eras of pass rushers. And then I did a list to see who you had to go against. Now, I want the audience out there 100 yards of football to listen who Mr. Webb had to go against. Derek Thomas, Charles Haley, Richard Dent, Pat Swilling, Wilbert Marshall, Texas A&M great Ray Childers, Greg Thompson, TCU finalists, Cornelius Bennett, Charles Mann, Don Randall, Ted Washington, Mr. Ellis, Clyde Simmons, the great Reggie White, Chattanooga, Tennessee, University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, Howard, Leslie O'Neal, Little Rock, Arkansas, Alfred Williams, Kevin Green, Tony Tobert, Robert Porcher, South Carolina State, Simeon Rice, Warren South, Michael Strahan, and in practice, Jason Taylor, then a young Hugh Douglas. And this gentleman is not in the Hall of Fame with 113 career starts. And this is what sets me up and makes me mad at the Hall of Fame, because after the day, you better believe that 100 yards football, Vincent Turner, every video we're going to do, we're going to lobby for Richard Tombstone Jackson and Mr. Richmond Webb. This is the stat that separates why this gentleman, I can't understand why he's not in the Hall of Fame. He played 14 career games against Bruce Smith, who at the time was considered that leader of the league, and he only gave up 3 sacks. Come on, man. It's royalty here on 100 yards. Mr. Webb, that competition week in and week out. How did you mentally get up for that?
And that was the NFL. I mean, you sign up for it, I think you learn, my first game preseason was against Richard Dent. I think in preseason I was against Richard Dent, Clyde Simmons, Chris Dolman, and Carl Mecklenburg, and Simon Fletcher from Denver. So that was even before the real game started, but it didn't matter. Every week it was another guy. And like you said, we had some of the greatest pass rushers to ever line up to, take snaps, this and that. And, it was like a notch, putting a notch on their belt, when they could get a sack on a guy like Marino, because, they had the quick release and this and that. But, at times, all of them are not quick release passes, this and that. So every night you got to hold those blocks and this and that. So never easy feat. And we were a team that since we had Marino, a lot of times we would throw the ball 60 plus times a game, where back then, if you remember, a lot of teams were real run dominant heavy, where we had Marino, we would just air it out. So, and he wasn't a mobile quarterback. So at times that made it challenging as well, because we'd have to deal with all of the line stunts and people doing this and that. And so it would get crazy. But I always say, hey, you got to play with the hand you dealt. So that's what was dealt. And hey, ain't no need to crying over spilled milk. You know what you signed up for. You got to go out there and get it. So, that's the way we approached it. And we, like I said, we had a lot of success, but I had some great teammates, but it wasn't easy, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
The comments by Don Shula about you as a player that I kind of read yesterday and doing my research, and the things he said about you, he said you did your job at the high level from day one. Then he talked about how you shine like a shining star at left tackle. And then he spoke on how you had the respect of all the players. But the greatest thing that I'm going to take with me today after that interview, he called you the superior man. I want our audience to listen to rank and the status of quality A+. Your relationship with Don Shula.
Yeah, forever indebted. You know, I think the thing with Coach Shula was, and you look at some of the guys that play for him, he was a great coach, but, you know, I think some of the things he instilled in me as a player, it still allowed me to have success after life, after football. So it was more than just learning football plays with Coach Shula. You know, as far as his philanthropy work, you know, learning to give back to people that's less fortunate, doing things like that, being on time, being a man of your word, having character, having integrity, this and that, all those little things that allowed him to have success. And not only in the 90s, but the 80s, the 70s, you know, pretty much every decade to have consistent winning teams that long. It's the little things. And I think I learned that. And then just being a man of what you say, let your word be your bond, you know, and it's not always got to be written out. If you tell somebody you're going to do something, you do it. And it's carried me and it's helped me form relationships from over years and this and that. And I think that's why people respect me and they respect people. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you can't, be man enough to call back and say, hey, can we change it or whatever? Something came up, X, Y, rather than just shy away and don't say anything. So those are some of the characteristics I learned from Coach Shula. And it ain't broke, it ain't fixed it. And I continue to operate that way today.
And one of your best days in life, December the 25th, 2006, you being inducted in the Miami Dolphins Ring of Honor. Elaborate on that.
Well, when you look at it, like you said, the Ring of Honor, and I think the Dolphins started in the late 60s, and then being able to have your name enshrined in the stadium with all the other greats, you know, Bob Greasy, Zonka, Larry Little, Dwight Stevenson, Dick Anderson, Mark Duper, Mark Clayton, you know, Zach, just you're one of not just one of the best players when you play, but that's since the history of the organization has been in existence. And for them to want to honor you by putting your name up there with some of the elite players they ever put on that uniform, it was huge. And I can remember that night, Coach Shula kind of introduced it, and then Dan was able to be there for that. So when people take time, so I think Dan was doing media in New York then, but for him to come back and, you know, watch my name being unveiled at the stadium at the Dolphins, you know, that's, I think you don't forget that, because, you know, those are your teammates, and then, you know, how happy and everybody was for you. And it's a huge accomplishment. Like you said, I don't take that lightly to be mentioned amongst some of the all-time greats to ever put on a Dolphin uniform. So, that was outstanding.
It's always royalty here at 100 Yards Football. We've had some great guests, but today it's probably been a tremendous blessing to have one of the greatest offensive tackles to play in the game. And I think it's a tragedy that we sit here and this gentleman that's not in the Hall of Fame comes from a rich football area in South Oak Cliff, played with Texas A&M at the time, where I think the Southwest Conference, no doubt in the mid-'80s, was the best conference in all this college football, rival the SEC right now. So, Mr. Richmond Webb, your final words today here on 100 Yards of Football.
Hey, I'm just grateful, you know, you had me on your show, Vincent, and definitely enjoyed the way y'all put everything together. And thank you for continuing to put my name out there for that honor. I think, like I said, my stats, my career speaks for itself. And I know at times it takes time to get in there. They can't get everybody in there at one. But when you got people that's taking time to mention, to keep your name out there, to say, hey, this guy is deserving of that honor, I'm truly indebted. And I definitely appreciate that. I don't take it lightly, because it's other guys that you could choose to push and this and that. But when somebody takes that time and mention to do the research, and like you said, I played in the 90s. We're in 2023 going to 2024. So that was over 30 years ago, but for somebody to say, no, we need to make this right, this and that, it's an honor. I appreciate it. And man, thank you. But man, enjoyed being on your show, and I appreciate everything. But yeah, I'm still that kid from South Oak Cliff, brother. I'm
Yes,
gonna be that. Yes, sir.
Well, I'd like to say before I give my final words, I'd like to thank my staff at 100 Yards Football today, to Mr. Logan Landers. Thank you for making it happen today for us. To Mr. Ronnie Keebler, Brooklyn, New York, man, you know I love you. I want to be where I'm at. To Mr. Jeremiah Long, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, by way of Knoxville, I love you, man. Thank you. To Mr. Bobby Butler, first-round pick, Florida State Finest, Atlanta Falcons. And to Mr. Mark, a.k.a. Bass Denham, thank you for your outstanding introduction. And then, of course, to the young man, Mr. Maryland. My final words, we had a great guest today, Mr. Richmond Webb, by way of Texas A&M, the 12th man, Miami Dolphins' greatest. When I think about him, I think about, you know, I'm an 80s guy. I think about that great band out of New York, Chic. We Are Rebels. Mr. Richmond Webb was Rebels back in the 90s. Look at the competition he faced, man. Derek Thomas, Bruce Smith, Reggie White, like Chic. We Are Rebels, baby. Mr. Richmond Webb. If you like the video today, please come in and share it here on 100 Yards Football and be blessed. Thank you.